Right. I will call the meeting back to order, and we will pick up with item 8D now. It was 8C originally, which is the Corcoran storage 2, or we need a better name for it with this the other storage 2, but that one.
Kedra's joining us virtually to go through this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. This request is for rezoning site plan variance and conditional use permit. You saw this last month when the applicant approached the council about modifying the request from what the Planning Commission saw at their meeting on August 3rd. Next slide, please. This property is on the westernmost border of the city. It is guided light industrial and zoned urban reserve, which is a holding zone until municipal services are available. I'll skip through to the next slide, please. So the request from the applicant is a rezoning from urban reserve to light industrial, a site plan, a conditional use permit to allow self-storage, and a single variance for development in the MUSA in advance of municipal sewer and water. This is a change from what the Planning Commission saw at their August 3rd meeting. That meeting included 2 variances from setbacks adjacent to residential and from the buffer standards to allow buffering on someone else's property. Those 2 variances were withdrawn, and the applicant submitted a revised site plan after the August 24th meeting to eliminate 2 variances. Next slide. Yesterday, after office hours, we received an application, a submittal from the applicant with a new landscape plan, asking the council to consider a landscape plan that doesn't meet ordinance requirements. Staff really hasn't had time to review this. It came in last night. Generally, though, approval of the variance is required. What they're asking for is a variance from the new buffer yard ordinance requirements, and that would need to be reviewed by the Planning Commission before coming to the council. So I'm prepared to go through a whole presentation this evening, but I would like to pause at this point because really the council has limited options for action this evening. If the applicant wishes to proceed with this new landscape plan that they submitted last night, it's really not appropriate for the council to discuss that without a formal variance application going through the Planning Commission. If you go to the next slide, please. You can see the landscape plan that was in the packet on the left that conforms to the ordinance, and the landscape plan that was submitted last night, which removes 50 overstory trees, 88 understory trees, and 102 shrubs. Those are being removed from the buffer yard requirements, and while certainly it's something we talked about when we were adopting the buffer yard ordinance, that the amount of landscaping could be a lot in certain circumstances. Again, it's not appropriate to look at this evening without staff having time to review. So the next slide gives the council 3 recommendations or 3 options. If you go to that, Jess, which is certainly the council could move ahead and adopt the approval recommendation in the staff report with the plans that were submitted and reviewed by staff, which conditions of approval were attached. A second option would be to simply direct this back to the Planning Commission and have the applicant submit a formal variance application with hardship findings for consideration by the Planning Commission at their November meeting. That would require an extension to the 120-day review period. And lastly, the council could move to deny the request based on the finding that the application is premature with the variance. And Mr. Mayor, I would just ask if you would like me to go through the application as it was originally submitted. I'd be happy to do that or answer questions about this new request.
Sounds good. I think let's see if there's questions first. one route would be potentially approving the reviewed plan as is, and maybe, sorry if this is what you just said and I missed it. And then the applicant could decide to then request a variance and go through that process.
Correct, I did not say that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's absolutely correct. If you proceeded with option one, they would have approval based on the plans they submitted and staff reviewed, but they always have the option to come back and ask for a variance later.
Okay, gotcha. Is there any questions for Kendra on?
So actually, 1 and 3 can be, we don't actually have to deny the request.
We could approve the request as was in the packet without the change made last night. And then the applicant could decide whether or not after that approval to submit an application for a variance like their plans show for this. If you want to come up.
No, that's the way we'd like to proceed.
Gotcha. Good to know. Okay. Any questions for applicant or Kendra on that?
I got one,
Go for it.
if I can. The screening to the north, we're screening for future residential. Is that correct, Kendra? Or-
Mr. Mayor, council member, the screening that's required under the buffer yard ordinance, if you will recall, is based on the existing zoning.
Yeah,
So the property to the north is zoned urban reserve, which is a residential district. Ultimately, that property is guided industrial. In the future, potentially
Okay.
that could be industrial property.
and then
But it's
north,
based on the current zoning.
and then north of that property is the solar farm. Am I right?
Actually, Mr. Mayor, council member, it is a single property, but on the north side of the property, the solar
Is
farm
the solar.
yes, on the north 40 acres.
So we're putting up screening on something just goofy. I'm talking all loud. Thanks. I just had to ask that question. Thanks.
That's,
I would add a little commentary. I know there was some discussion in the staff packet regarding the potential for the buffer yard being overplanted. And I think maybe the applicant had some concerns to that effect. I would say, looking at the specific landscaping plan that was submitted, there were a number of trees that have a really large spread that have a potential to cause overcrowding. But I think that there are alternatives that could be considered that would help to mitigate that if you just choose things that don't have as broad of a form when they're mature, more columnar oaks for the overstory trees, maybe some paperbark maples, things like that that don't get as large. You may not have the overcrowding concern. So if we're going to be looking at additional landscaping plans, as the applicant has asked us to do, I would not be open to deviating from the requirements of the buffer yard, but I would be open to alternative suggestions for what's being planted in the buffer yard to optimize the quality and survivability of the foliage.
And yeah, I think a lot of that would be what would be tackled if they came in with an application by the planning commission and then us.
so can I get a clarification?
Yeah.
So go back to those 3 options, please. So the following as outlined in the staff report, that those 4 are, they're asking for reduction in the buffer.
No,
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 that came in last night as a change.
yes. So the
Which one did the planning commission vote 4-0 to
What's
deny?
up there? Oh,
Well-
to deny? No, that was
The original.
up there with it being farther,
With variances.
yeah, without the changes we asked them to make last time.
Okay.
And I think it was based on
So we don't need,
the lack
so,
of changes before they made the
so
change.
number 3 is it direct staff to bring a resolution for findings of fact for denial of what?
The whole thing.
We
For
generally
example, you
offer
might
that
con-
as an option if there was something that council wanted to.
I think.
Oh, yeah, so we could just say,
Yeah, because the clock.
forget the whole thing.
It's premature, it's whatever, we could say whatever.
Okay, so, yeah, can I make a motion?
Sure.
I'm gonna make a motion on 1, which includes A, B, C, and D.
Okay, we have a motion for that ordinance and those 3 resolutions. Do we have a second?
I would second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
3-2, I believe?
4-1.
No.
Nope.
Oh, you, okay.
Okay. And then we would, so 3-2, that passes, and we would encourage if you wanted to make a application for a variance to come on and do that after.
So mine's more of a, approve this, I don't like the idea of whatever they're asking for. It's more we're gonna approve it, and then if they wanna start the clock on a new process,
Right.
then that's.
That's the
then-
variance
Yeah.
change.
We won't
For
have,
addition.
I worry about running out of time.
Yeah, this would be a whole new application and
Yeah.
clock. Perfect. Okay, thank you. On to.
Thanks for staying so long.
Appreciate
Yes,
it.
thank you.
On to 8, formerly 8D, now 8E, Red Barn Pet Retreat.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a comprehensive plan amendment, rezoning, preliminary plat, and site plan for a new business at the northwest corner of Stieg Road and 101. If you go to the next slide, please. This is a vacant parcel that was platted as an outlot as part of the Bellwether subdivision. The applicant actually owns a similar business at 12520 Stieg Road, which is that triangle piece on the north side of Stieg, just to the west of the subject property. And you reviewed a sketch plan in 2022. The Parks Commission reviewed a previous concept on May 18th of this year, and the Planning Commission reviewed this item on September 7th and voted 4-0 to recommend approval of the application request. Next slide. The property is currently guided and zoned light industrial, and again, that was done as part of the Bellwether project. Directly to the north is the Nelson International property, which is guided and zoned light industrial. To the south, across Stieg Road, is a commercial property you reviewed a sketch plan for earlier this evening. And to the west is low-density residential zoned PUD and developed as Bellwether. The other side of 101 is residential property in the city of Maple Grove. So the request on the next slide is the comprehensive plan amendment and rezoning to reclassify from industrial to commercial, a preliminary plat to create 1 lot and 1 outlot, a conditional use permit for a kennel in the C2 district, and site plan approval. And so I'll quickly go through each of those items. The next slide, the comprehensive plan amendment is needed because commercial kennels are not allowed in the light industrial district, but are allowed in the C2 district. And the result of the comprehensive plan amendment really just moves the boundary between commercial and industrial from the south line of this property to the north side of this property. And staff finds that the comp plan amendment and rezoning is consistent with the Northeast District vision to be a jobs creator and a service provider. And if approved by the council, that comprehensive plan amendment would need to go to the Met Council for review. As a result, we did send a copy of this to adjacent jurisdictions, and they had no comments on the comprehensive plan amendment. The next slide shows the property where that arrow is, and again, you can see it's purple to the north and red to the south of the subject property. So we'd be just moving that, adjusting that boundary. The next slide, if the plan amendment is approved, the property must be rezoned. And the staff report outlined how we believe if the comp plan's approved, the rezoning standards would be met. And the next slide, again, shows that just moving that boundary between the commercial and industrial from the south to the north side of this property line. Now, the preliminary plat, as I said, creates two parcels. Lot 1, which is a 12-acre parcel for this business, and Outlot A, which is a 1.4-acre parcel, an outlot for future development. As part of the project, the applicant would dedicate about an acre of land for right-of-way. You can see that cul-de-sac going north. There isn't an opportunity for it to extend beyond this property because of the Nelson development to the north. But the right-of-way would allow for future subdivision of Lot 1 at some future date into additional parcels. The applicant did provide a concept plan for how that could occur. The access into the property is on the very south side of that future right-of-way. And in the interim, the applicant has requested that the right-of-way be dedicated, but the road not improved at this time, and that simply a driveway be allowed into the development. That's similar to what the city allowed for the Nelson property to the north. There's a private driveway in a public right-of-way until such time as that public street is built. Staff does support that concept. Next slide. The conditional use permit is to allow a commercial kennel in the C2 district. While the ordinance doesn't establish specific standards for a dog kennel, it does require compliance with the general conditional use permit standards, and we did outline our findings related to that in the staff report. I won't repeat them this evening. The next slide starts to get into the details of the project. This is the layout of the property, the new building for the daycare, and a large green area that will be used for dog walking and recreation. Next slide shows the building, which I think does a nice job of reflecting some of the rural character the council has frequently talked about. The plans are subject to the new Northeast District standards and generally do comply. I would note that lap siding and shake is allowed for residential uses, but is only allowed for commercial uses with council support. The Planning Commission did support the use of the red generic LP siding and shake. It's not LP brand, but same concept, with stone accents on the front of the building. Generally, the principal building has asphalt shingles, but there are some porch overhangs on the north and south with metal roofs. And those do appear to comply with our ordinance standards. However, some material details will be required before final approval. Next slide. There are some details that need to be addressed, and we've included conditions to address the mechanical equipment and lighting standards. I wanted to note that parking under our ordinance would typically require 88 stalls, but the code allows the zoning administrator to compute the minimum requirements based on other similar uses and industry standards. And so as we look at the conditions on this site, we do believe the 61 stalls proposed will be adequate for the proposed use. However, we've added a condition that if there is a documented parking problem documented by the city, we would require the applicant to add additional stalls, generally in the northeast portion of the parking lot is where there's area for that. So we feel comfortable with that number of parking stalls for this use based on operations on his existing business and other similar type operations around the country. The next slide talks about landscaping, and generally it does comply. There are a couple things that need to be updated for compliance, but I wanted to highlight that the code for landscaping requires that applicants provide the greater of a landscaping formula based on the perimeter of the lot or based on the square footage of the building. In this case, 82 overstory trees and 212 shrubs would be required based on lot size. Because that lot is intended to be subdivided in the future, we felt like it would be appropriate to approve something less than that. The 35 overstory trees, 6 understory trees, and 111 shrubs currently shown exceeds what would be required based on the building square footage. And the Planning Commission felt that that was appropriate given the circumstances on this lot, but certainly council needs to ultimately make that decision. We did include that as a condition of approval as recommended by the Planning Commission.
Can I
Next
interrupt
slide.
and ask
Oh.
a question? Is that okay?
Yeah.
61 parking spots? It seems odd to me. I don't want to nitpick, but if the applicant wanted less, I would be totally okay with that, but,
That's not a lot.
It's gonna be more than just a dog
Is
place,
it?
right?
Yes, it is. It's going to
Retail
have,
and couple
oh,
of-
okay, never
Would there be
mind.
shared parking then for future application or future
All right, forget
subdivision?
it. Take it back.
Potentially. Okay.
the applicant proposed the 61 stalls and we're comfortable with that.
Okay, fair enough.
Number of employees. I think I was almost done. Where were we? Landscaping, if you go to the next, landscaping, there was another thing where there's some flexibility. I think I wanted to highlight again with the buffer yards required adjacent to residential. If you remember the layout of Lot 1 is significant and the northwest portion of it will remain in its natural state with a number of trees for walking trails, and believe that the existing vegetation does meet the buffer yard requirements, that for this Lot 1, that does meet the buffer under our flexibility provided in the code, and that Outlot A separates the Lot 1 from the adjacent residential. So we believe this does meet the buffer requirements, but that future development on Outlot A and redevelopment of the west half of Lot 1 will require a B buffer adjacent to the residential. So we have included that as well as a condition of approval. And you can see that on the next slide, kind of what I'm talking about with the vegetation that provides that buffer between the building and the adjacent residential. Two other issues on the next slide. Utilities. Sanitary sewer is available on the site today, but municipal water is not. And so the applicant has a couple of options. Three options, actually. They could amend the Maple Grove water agreement with the city of Corcoran. We did reach out to Maple Grove. Maple Grove was open to amending it if the city would agree to some improvements on 101 and Steeg Road. We would pass those typically on to the developer, and the developers indicated that that's just not feasible. So he would like to pursue a temporary private well to serve the site until city water is available. The third option would be to wait and begin construction only when city water is available, which we anticipate being in December of next year. And he simply didn't feel that he could wait that long, so he would be proceeding with a private well until such time as the city water is available. So on that note, the next slide, regardless of whether he temporarily uses a private well, our code does require trunk lateral area charges and connection charges. And the applicant asked that those be deferred for both sewer and water. And staff discussed several options and we identified 4. Option 1 would be to pay the sewer and water TLAC with the final plat and the sewer and water connection charges at building permit, which is what the city code and the building and the adopted fee schedule require. Option 2, and I outline these in the staff report, is to pay the sewer TLAC with the final plat, pay the sewer connection charge at building permit, and defer water TLAC fees and connection charges until Corcoran water is available, which we estimate will be December of next year. This is the option that was used for the Nelson International property directly to the north of the site and is specifically outlined as a viable option by Chapter 51 of our city code. The third option is an ordinance amendment and an assessment deferral. And an ordinance amendment is needed because the code as it's currently written only allows hardships for homestead properties, and hardships are pretty narrowly defined as disability and military service. So if the council wanted to pursue this option, we'd have to broaden the definition of hardship. And so we'd need to do that ordinance amendment and related assessment policy. The fourth option is an assessment agreement for deferral. We don't have an assessment policy that allows deferment of TLAC and connection charges, but it's not unheard of. Cities can do that and do that when they want to finance new development, because that's kind of what it is. It's helping finance new development in a growing or redeveloping community typically. And so both 3 and 4, we would need to spend some time as staff working on developing those if that was the council direction, to make sure it was fair and equitable. So I think our recommendation this evening is for approval of the comprehensive plan amendment, rezoning, preliminary plat, site plan, and conditional use permit, with one change that I believe is on your desk to Resolution 2385, Condition 8D, related to the barking noise issue. We've worked with the city attorney and the applicant's attorney. We're comfortable with that modification. And then we would ask council to weigh in on the assessment policy question raised by the applicant. It's not a condition of approval because it doesn't really get triggered until the final plat application and the development contract, but we think it's important to understand the council direction so we can help the applicant work through the next steps of the process. And Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to answer questions. I know that was a lot, but the applicant, I believe, is in the audience this evening as well.
Sounds good. Thanks, Kendra. I think maybe we should start with the last couple items on the, well, good start.
What was the barking thing?
That was a changed, I believe it was a changed condition, just with the wording, was it the animals versus dogs? It added animals in case there was another type of animal.
Oh, okay, fair enough. All right, go ahead. Keep going.
I was thinking tackling the request or the conversation on the TLAC and water sewer charges deferment or lack thereof.
My support would be number 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was thinking.
Can you bring the options back up again, please?
Sure.
So that would be deferring water to when it's actually connected and not deferring sewer because it's available.
It's in line with past practice too.
Yeah.
Can we make a motion?
Uh,
Or is that part of?
That'd be part of one of
Okay.
these, actually. It's a good question where exactly
So
that is.
I think as Kendra mentioned, the sewer and water I do not believe is in any, this is just giving us direction to move forward, or it's not actually in
Okay.
these
I
approvals.
don't think
Is
it's
that
part
correct,
of the
Kendra?
motion.
Fair enough.
Correct, that's exactly right. So a motion would be valuable just to provide direction to staff.
I'll make a motion to direct staff to number 2.
Second.
Any further discussion? I guess I would just add pending the rest of this is approved, obviously.
Yeah.
But other than that, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Didn't hear?
Abstain.
Okay.
Can I ask a couple questions before?
Yeah.
I've got some too.
Go for it. John and
Would,
David.
if I can't remember the language, I think I voted for the Red Barn as a home occupied business when they started. And now they're transitioning to a non-home occupied business. We don't even allow, I don't think we allow kennels in residential areas anymore, period. So are we, and then by having a non-home occupied business as an option, so there, I don't know if one of the rationale of being in a home occupied business is like affordability or something. Are we gonna, does this take away the ability to operate the home facility? That's a question I have.
You mean their existing
Their-
home facility?
What
Or
did I
any
say?
home facility?
Like, just the one down the road?
Yeah, that, if, once they have this, I imagine they're gonna stop occupying the other one.
I don't think so, actually. I think I could be wrong.
I thought our ordinances were such that they couldn't.
That'd be great if you want to come up.
Yeah,
That'd be great.
I can.
Applicant's here.
Mr. Mayor, would you, oh, well, I don't know if he can answer this, but okay.
Okay. Let's have him speak quick, and then Kendra, you can fill in after.
Thank you, council members, Mr. Mayor. I'll give it a shot. What happened is the rules did change, that was brought up earlier, and that is correct. The rules changed after my approval. What had changed is that there are no more of these types of businesses, new ones, in residentially zoned neighborhoods. I'm grandfathered in, and my business is actually tied to me specifically
Yeah.
at my house. So that's what ends that, is with me. This is a completely separate business in a commercially zoned property, so this would just be a completely separate thing.
So you're gonna run both units?
Correct.
And are you gonna have staff moving between units?
It's likely, I mean, it's literally right down the street, that's likely, but my staff requirements would only go down in my current one, because it'll be used initially. With the new one, we're gonna do more business in the new one, which would lower, my thought process as over time, as the residential neighborhood has developed around my business and we've outgrown it, we need a new business, and so we get that at the end of the street in the proper zoning. We're still gonna use my current business, probably geared stronger towards boarding specifically, which is much lower traffic than the daycare business. And we'll run the majority of the daycare business out of the new facility, but that's gonna be something that I'm gonna be working out over time, obviously. But we're completely doing this completely separate entity to not mess with my current business, basically. Kendra?
Kendra?
Yes, thank you. I did speak with the city attorney to confirm this, but as long as he is in compliance with the terms of his home occupation granted by Resolution 2016-72, he can continue to operate out of that site. And as I couldn't hear Daniel very well, but I believe that's what he said his intention was. And this would be a new related but separate business. And he needs to comply with the terms of both this new CUP on this site and the old interim use permit conditions on the existing site.
Okay.
But there's no, as long as he's in compliance with the IUP, the city cannot repeal the IUP.
And we do allow for kennels in this district.
As a conditional use.
Yeah.
I think there's one other, right, that it's allowed in.
Sounds right.
So there was a question about, is it fair for this to happen? And my reading of the code is anybody who owns or controls a parcel where it's a conditional use can apply for a CUP to run a business. I don't think there's a fairness issue there.
And then my request would be to make sure if we have multiple dog kennels in our town, that they are held to the same standard. And I don't, it doesn't sound like they're equal.
You're talking about his current,
No, I'm talking about the concerns that she said.
Oh, about this one?
Her hours, her signage, like we can't have separate rules. We have equal protection clause. So if it's 7 to 7 at his home-based business and it's 6 to 4:30 at hers, we should at least make sure that they're the same.
And we can regulate that through the CUP on this one?
No, I'm talking about these hours are gonna be different because they're gonna be in an
Commercial.
commercial. So I'm talking about the existing 2 home-based businesses.
Having different standards.
We gotta make sure that they're,
They gotta be the
Well, we
same.
can't
Yeah,
go
but
back.
But I don't know
on-
that we can
can't
go back and change
on
that, yeah.
My only question on
Wait.
that would be is if,
we have to go back. You can't make a law that treats 2 people in the same circumstance differently.
well, we could amend hers probably.
Yeah.
To be equal at some point if she
Yeah.
requested, but to impose something different on him than what he had. But my question would be, is there anything in his original, it was the IUP or interim use permit?
Yeah.
Kendra can
Yes.
speak on it.
Okay.
It was, I believe, a hybrid, then it changed with the new law where I was grandfathered in, but Kendra could speak.
And my
on that
question,
later.
my question to staff on that would be, is there anything in that approval process and the regulation thereof that could be impacted if he's running a facility down the road and running trips back and forth with staff? You know, whether it's to get supplies or moving staff between, is there anything
It's
in
not,
that?
in my mind, that's not a separate business. These aren't separate businesses if we're doing that.
He's running, it sounds like he's running 2 separate entity businesses. They all fall under the same deal, but they're different. Just one is in a commercial zone and the other one is in a residential zone. That's different, but I think where you're going here is the thing we really want people to do when they start a home occupation, right? They start a business out of their home and then they eventually get big enough and can move to commercial district and become commercial businesses in town with the hope that they would no longer have the home occupation business because now they're running as commercial, right?
But in this
I
case, there's no end to that home occupation
No, and
business
that's by
what's
right,
being
to,
said.
Yeah,
by
that's
right
how
to
that-
him, only
He
unless,
works.
my only concern is if there's something in that original approval that he has to adhere to that by having a site down the road, he's gonna violate that.
I can speak to that a little bit, if it's helpful.
Wait a minute, before you do, I think one example would be if you're running a home base, and I don't wanna, but you can speak to my question too, since it's related. Like if one of the IUPs or, is you have to be there, it will be a problem. if
Oh, on
you-
site?
Yeah, because if you have a home-based business and one of the condition of approvals is like you have to be on site, that might be a problem.
Well, with any business, I can't imagine you expect the owner to be on site 7 days a week.
No, I know, but there might, I'm giving you an example.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not saying specific to
No,
that,
yeah.
but there might be an example of, you can have this business at home if it's your primary source of income, if you're around, whatever. Like I couldn't open a Dairy Queen at the end of my driveway and then go,
Well, there might be limitations
my
on
job
the
and
number of
forget everything.
employees, right? If you're limited to say 10 employees.
yeah.
And now all of a sudden you've got 30 employees on staff, but 20 of them are out of this building and 10 are out of here, but you start moving employees back and
Yeah.
forth. Does that become a violation? Is that something he has to consider?
I guess we have to look at
Yes.
we have to look at the language of
Kendra
the
has-
original approval.
Kendra, could you,
Ye-
you were gonna
Yeah,
say
I
something?
just, the IUP for the home occupation that exists today does have limits on the number of employees, the hours of operation, those kinds of things. So it will be something that Daniel will have to manage. It's not really that different from somebody that might own 2 retail stores and I can't take care of you at store 1, but please visit me at my other store down the road. That's really how I think we need to think about these things. They're tied, but they are separate businesses, and he does need to comply with the conditions in the IUP. So you could not have all of your employees based out of the new commercial business and running back and forth, throughout the day. But could you drive a dog that got dropped off at this business over to that business? Yes, you could. But you better not be wearing a golf cart path between the two, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So it's something we'll have to watch, and Daniel's aware of that, and we'll certainly work with him, but they are to operate as two different businesses, and as long as he's in compliance with those conditions in that resolution, he can continue to operate the home occupation with the limits on employees and hours of operation from that approval.
So then, Mr. Mayor, if I may, to go back to the question of, we've got All Seasons and we've got Red Barn. All Seasons has different operational hours, and you've been in business 17 years? 19, and Red Barn has been in business how long?
Roughly 7.
7. Why is there a difference, as Councilmember Bottom mentioned too? Why do we have a different type thing,
My guess would be the
and they're doing the
standard
same
change.
thing out of the Red Barn and All Seasons? Why are there different hours?
If
Well,
it's
different
IUP
councils.
based, councils will set standards based upon their judgment at the time. So you're,
Then what
You're
do we
sampling
do
across
to
12
I think we
what
could,
do we do
I
to
think we
resolve
could,
that?
if the other applicant was interested, could come forward with a proposal to have your IUP amended, potentially, to,
And Kendra can speak a little bit better to that process, but generally, yes, it very much depends on the council that is in it.
Okay.
And the request from the applicant. Some applicants wanted more employees, less employees, different things, so
it's not always
depended
one-to-one.
on, it's not necessarily, it's dependent a bit on the request and is on the council. But Kendra can speak to the process for amending an IUP.
Yeah, I don't want to get too sideways this evening, but every IUP is different, first of all. And I forget the year, but a previous council changed the code after both of these businesses were permitted to no longer allow commercial, or to allow kennels in residential areas and only allow them in commercial areas, which means that modifying these IUPs becomes more difficult and just maybe a larger project with some ordinance amendments. So certainly if that's something the council wants to do, there is a path forward for that. It's just something I think that warrants a discussion offline with staff.
I think maybe if you'd be interested, I'm sorry, Maureen? If you'd be interested, I'd be happy to meet, and maybe we could see what specific items you might be looking at wanting to change.
To be honest with you, I don't want more, have at it, you know what I mean? Like,
Gotcha.
you know, I'm happy with my business, and Red Barn's interests are not mine. You know, my thing is preserving my property and its ability to do this as there are no more allowed, as having a conditional use permit dedicated to dogs. I mean, I see myself, believe it or not, as hopefully donating my property to a nonprofit for the futurance of service dogs for,
That's
Okay.
you know,
Cause.
not necessarily in a, so I just want to maintain that property's ability to.
Exist the way you are.
Correct.
Okay.
And then interim use permits.
And I have two
Sounds-
parcels that have greater land mass than what is, they're even looking at, so,
Gotcha.
you know.
Okay.
Potentially at that time, we could look at changing something.
Yeah, we just have to look at a change, as Maureen mentioned, it doesn't.
Hopefully that's no
continue.
time soon.
It does have a
No, I don't,
sunset
yeah.
with that, so it need to be a code change at some point if we were interested in.
That's something we could
looking
consider.
at.
Yeah. Okay. But thanks for bringing all those points up today. I appreciate it, and let's definitely stay in touch. Back to this application, so we've kind of settled on the second option. Besides that, we hadn't gotten too much into the specifics couple of the areas that Kendra had brought up some points about the landscape flexibility. Planning Commission seemed generally on board with the kind of middle ground. Council feel differently, feel the same. Any questions on that? I think it was regarding how they calculate it and versus like building square footage versus total lot. And it was more than the building square footage, but less than the entire lot perimeter. It seemed kind of a good middle ground. Okay. My only question, and I know you've had conversations with staff about this, was regarding the orientation of the building and access to the site from the turn-in there. Because, and Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't there some concern about that turning radius and how that would work? And then if you were to extend that street when future development came in, there'd be no way to really fix that.
I think the turn radius element was public safety requirement. From a transportation requirement, it's really more of a private business matter because you're right in. In this situation where it's just his facility he's proposing, it's a right in. There's less concern from a transportation standpoint, so it's really a public safety requirement on the turning radius. We have talked to him about in the future if it ever extends in the cul-de-sac, depending on the uses that are up there, his clients, the business's clients, might struggle at certain times if there's competing interests to get out. It would really only impact his business folks, and they might have to wait a little longer to turn out. So it's I guess just more of a beware, plan your site type recommendation from engineering, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Gotcha.
At one of the meetings, I think it was a planning commission meeting, they talked about this ghost plan for a future building in the front yard. That's not part of this approval process, right?
I believe so.
Correct, it's not part of the approval.
Okay.
Other than that, the only other issue I had was the siding options that Kendra discussed, and the Planning Commission was also supportive of that. We feel the same. I think it meets the intent of the ordinance or the district plan and all that.
I love the mural.
Yeah,
Thank you
looks cool.
for including that. It's a nice landmark for the city.
Yeah, I was thinking that, and yeah, it plays into a lot of things.
I had a question on the mural. I love it also.
Thank you.
It breaks up the whole side. My issue does, and Kendra, you may or may not, I don't remember who I had the conversation with. A mural like this, is this part of the sign package? And we only allow signage on one side of the property or one side of the building? This is two signs. Am I saying it right? It's not an advertising mural. It's not doesn't say Red Barn or anything. I'm trying to find it quick.
It doesn't say that.
Yeah, a mural is permitted. This is a mural, not an advertising sign. This is a decorative element. It's not considered a sign, and it is permitted.
It doesn't open a can of worms on anything. Somebody's not gonna say, well, they can do this. I'm trying to remember, where's the picture of it?
It'd be like a restaurant
God's
having a
sakes.
food mural on the side of the restaurant.
That's what I'm saying is, I just, knowing some of the sign stuff that's happened in the past from a previous life.
Yeah, I think the language is pretty specific
Yeah, I
about
think
not
we're okay.
allowing.
A silo would look good on the property.
Probably looks good on everything.
Considering when we know it's big.
And then, what was the other item?
You're talking mural, talking.
Yeah, don't try and help me. I'm beyond help.
Well,
Let's keep
you
going.
ready to make a motion?
Sure.
Go ahead.
I will make a motion that we approve resolution 2023-82, approving the comprehensive plan amendment, and actually let's stop there for the time being, because it does require a higher majority.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I just thought of fire suppression. What is the plan for fire suppression? I'm sorry it took me a minute. I actually had it written down here too, but
Yeah, no problem. We're
you're
planning on-
talking how many gallons sitting, waiting?
It's in the memo, Dean.
So.
I know.
So we're looking at full fire suppression, and that fire suppression by code has to be, there's a word for it, satisfied gallons per minute. If it is a well in the interim, that may require a holding tank, likely will require a holding tank, so that that fire suppression can operate as intended. The city, when I'm on city water, it's a non-issue because that will.
Yeah, but gallons per minute, you remember?
I don't remember.
Okay.
But based on design, it has to be available. They kind of go hand in hand. And if something's considered, I just don't have that in front of me.
It's significant, so
Oh, for sure.
I,
And as
just
far
so it's
as-
understood.
As far as public safety, we did we don't have the diagram here today, but we did make sure that we ran the proper analysis for the fire trucks and everything as well.
Thanks. Sorry, that's all.
Oh, no worries. So we have, do you have a comment?
It's a little unclear to me if I'm able to talk about the assessment or if that's just something I shouldn't be talking about.
I think
If you guys are
we
curious,
had-
my
We'd
thoughts.
kind of decided on that, so unless council wants to specifically hear if anyone's taking a
I
reconsideration.
mean, you're happy to talk about it, but I don't know that the council would probably redirect.
Yeah, I think
honestly.
we're likely set in that decision,
Okay.
but if you just want to discuss
So
it.
the reason it came about, we had to create an avenue that's consistent with all the city codes when walking the dog, so we made the parcel much, much bigger. So then the TLAC fees obviously ballooned from that. It's not the original plan. So that was one part of it. Then the other part is because we have to develop this whole area, it blocks off the top, so now I'm pulling in a 12-inch water main, which is another massive expense, which was the only reason I asked for the city's help to alleviate some of the pressure on the business as we open it first, because such massive numbers. That's where it came from. It didn't come out of left field.
Gotcha.
What are the numbers?
It's about 70 was the sewer and 2 something for the,
I'm trying to offset that 12 inch water main. Hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of feet that didn't have to in the original plan. But we switched the plan to make sure that it's consistent for you guys to enforce in the future as far as uses of.
But you won't have to pull the water now because you're having your own well, right?
We'll have to connect up by December.
Right there, but I was told that now I have to pull 12-inch water main from the north part of the site, is what I was told because of the new plan. So I was trying to offset that cost, which is why I requested the assessment to take some pressure off the business.
So when a development comes in and plats property, we look at a comp plan, which identifies trunk water main routes. This property has a trunk water main route on it. So early on came and he had it as an outlot, and so we required like an easement across the property. So that, but with the new plan, him wanting to use the property, we don't look at his use, we look at if you're using the property, whatever it is, our TLAC is trunk infrastructure divided by, buildable area. So when we commit a piece of land, that's when we secure the funds for our trunk system. So because the applicant was intending to use that property and needed to plat it to meet his business operations, and the parcel was fully to the north, he now is required to comply with the comp plan, which requires a trunk water main to be connected through his property. So that kind of movement went from just requiring an easement to actually installing it. He does get compensated for the overage, so the cost between the 8-inch and the 12-inch would get deducted. It's still a cost, but it's a very similar cost that all developers experience, and it's part of our comp plan requirements.
think for
So
me,
does that make sense? So there, I mean,
does.
because of the use of that area and actually needing to plat it, and then we just look at it when it's platted, that's when we 6-year money. And that's very consistent with every other developer. So if we were to change that, we would
everything.
have to be prepared to
Big can of
honor that
worms,
request that every developer
open
will ask
worms
that
everywhere.
request. So we can't, no matter the reason, if it's platted, we have to treat every developer the same. No matter if it's for just walking trails or if it's for an apartment building, we have to treat them the same. So,
Would it make sense for you to phase the walking trail and do it at a later date?
It's a big part of our services. And to be clear, I'm not asking for it to be changed. What I was asking for is the assessment for me to personally help offset being able to pay for all that infrastructure. It was just another tough one, really tough one.
But we've already given the fact that we're not making the entire cul-de-sac be put in initially, which we were at the beginning, correct?
well, it just depends on how you use the area. and that's
I
all a
understand.
little bit-
I'm just saying, we've already
Well,
done
And we
some
did
of that.
vote on
Usually we
option
would-
2, which has the small delay to when water, on the water side, when hookup happens is when that fee would become due. And the sewer would not be deferred at all because it's available.
And the water cost is estimated right now at 371,000
For the area charge?
for the area charge. And then TLAC for sewer is 75,000.
Gotcha. So the 300 and some would be until,
December
December 24.
24 or
yeah, or
January
whatever that ends up
25.
being. And then the other one would be due now, or due at final plat.
Have you thought about having a more circuitous walking path that doesn't go across the entire site?
It's complicated. I guess this objection to being able to walk on that land kind of came out of left field on the 11th hour. I can say that part of what makes our brand and what we are is that, you know, we're not the typical dog factory that's right downtown. It's that spread out country thing, and so the walking path is a part of our, not just our services, it's a part of our theme, our product. Our customers love it, it's important. To have all that land and make a small walking path, it's tough. I mean, it's tough. Like, I'm preserving the forest for a reason to keep it country and run the line different. It'd be tough. It would be tough. It's great to whether it's even.
My thoughts are, it's great you're doing everything you're doing, but you still own how many acres? Instead of making an outlot, so you defer taxes, those kind of things, it's all one lot, and it's equal to any other business that's out there that, or you put in the cul-de-sac, pay for everything, and push the development in, you know what I mean? You're using it as part of your business. I can't be fair by saying, yeah, they own the land, but that property's not part of the business, but they're using it as part of their business. We're splitting hairs on a whole bunch of things, and it's just open a ton of cans of worms.
I definitely understand your position. The only use of all of that land is to walk dogs on a.
But it's part of your business.
I think it's
part
the
of the
can of
business
worms that
cost.
it
I get you.
opens.
I get
Yeah.
you. I'm not, I understand your position. I do understand your position completely.
And I know what you're asking, and I think I was a huge supporter of the concept and stuff. It just, we're starting to dance through hoops that I'm not comfortable with, and it's opening all kinds of doors for a lot of people to come our way.
The ask would be huge for every development that
Yeah.
comes in the
Should be
future.
massive. That was the world's longest further discussion.
Yep,
We do,
that was.
we do have a motion and a second for the comprehensive plan amendment, so I will call the vote. And all those in favor say aye.
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 Unanimous. And then, question for, maybe Michelle can help, or here's Jess. The change
She's
D,
Coughing up along
AD, I
on there.
think it was AD,
Yes.
text change, change in the text?
Yes.
Is that included in
In
the draft resolution now?
In the draft resolution,
Okay,
but.
perfect. And I will entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 2023-502, rezoning the property from I-1 to C2, adopt or approve resolution 2023-83 with findings of fact for rezoning, resolution 2023-84 approving preliminary plat, and resolution 2023-85 approving the site plan and conditional use permit.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Thank you.
That was a mouthful.
Thank you. Best of luck.
Thanks for understanding.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, on to 9. We just have one item, 9A. We'll have a public comment opportunity briefly for 9A, which is bring back of the preliminary budget levy.
Thank you, Council. Anyone joining us virtually?
Did they win?
I'm going to start with reactions and raise your
know.
hand. Anyone in the audience, if you want to
Played the
approach
note.
the podium, state your name and address.
Yes.
Mayor and Council, at this time, no one's raising their hand.
Okay, Jess, go right ahead.
I just have in front of you today a new draft of the budget. Last meeting, we approved an amount, and you directed staff to provide some changes to the levy. I took a hard look at the budget and was able to present something. There are some reductions in staff, as well as reductions in some supplies and overtime, and a few additions of revenue after we come through the numbers a little bit more based on some information. So tonight is a draft budget, for a final draft budget for the preliminary. I would note we will do a final budget at the end of the year
December
with the levy on December 18th. So this is merely just something to show where we are today, and then staff will review final numbers. Health insurance is probably the one place where we would likely see some additional moves for the budget. And if that is the case, I would anticipate that staff will bring back a budget with potentially slightly modified.
Sounds good. Any questions on that? We've seen most of this. It's really just implementing the number we approved last time. Do you have a question, John?
Yeah, what was it is the same number
Yep.
as,
You directed us to get down to
8 million.
374,256, and so I've gotten us to that number.
Yeah, appreciate you getting that
what
done.
was the number last year?
The total number last year, I don't have it on the.
The levy?
No, it's in here.
Oh, it might be actually on this page, give me one second.
But the levy is basically the budget.
The levy is gonna be the amount of taxes levied. The budget will have some,
There'll be fees and stuff included with that.
Yeah, I can't remember what the levy was last year.
I don't recall off the top of my head, but
42% was it?
No, but that's a different number.
it should be in the 5-year finance.
It's in here,
it would have been total
It was-
property
I
tax.
thought it was like 8.1 mil.
It would have been, the total certified levy last year was $7,158,323.
7158.
Because that does include the property tax levy plus the debt service levy, we have to do both of those.
Yeah.
That would be the total.
General fund levy last year was 6,354 plus the debt levy.
Plus the debt levy, yeah. So it would be that second to the last line on page 13.
It's less of a levy increase percentage this time than it was last time.
Yes, last year we were close to 24.
Oh, yeah.
That's a lot of good work.
Thank hard conversations with our staff, I think is a big.
Did you have
Yes.
a motion?
Big discussion.
So the change is 13.8% in spend,
That sounds correct.
which is,
And we had a what, like was it a 12% population increase?
About.
and, yeah,
That's what we were
Yeah, what
anticipating
was your
based on the
inflation
number
rate?
and inflation is like 5,
for,
Yeah.
so it's under,
Yeah, I think it
it's
makes
under what I
that.
wanted. Okay, thank you, Jess.
All right, then I will make a motion to adopt the 2024 draft, or 2024 draft budget as presented, noting that final will be approved on December 18th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
On to new business, items 10, let's see here, did we move C, we moved C, right? That was added and then moved. Thank you, suggested we move that to consent.
We moved 10,
The added, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So it's just 10A and 10B as initially in the 5-year financial management plan and the draft enterprise, 2024 enterprise fund budgets.
yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. Anyone joining us virtually can press star 9. Star 9 if you're joining us on a telephone, or click the options and raise your hand if you're joining us virtually.
Has Tammy been sitting out there for,
Not the whole
Nope,
time. I
she's
told her
in
it
here
was-
now.
We had several planning items, so she hasn't been here the whole time.
she's been here for like 3
A
hours.
while though.
Is
She's
it
been very
possible
patient,
to
and
not have
and our
Tammy?
attorney is still ready and waiting for us for our
Is
first
he?
closed session.
Can we, is it possible to not have Tammy waiting here for 4 hours in the future?
are we paying her by the hour?
Are we paying you by the hour?
You're paying me for the project, so don't worry. Everything is good.
I know, but, okay, fine.
We could make it a presentation instead of an agenda item.
Yeah,
We can set it back for
we could do that in the future.
A lot of moving parts.
Okay,
Just
but
a moment, I'm pulling up her presentation as we
Okay,
speak.
sorry, it's hard to hear off you.
Thank you for hanging out.
Absolutely, good evening.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hello.
My eyes are a little put.
Echo.
Public comment?
Oh,
Hey,
actually, Tammy, hold on 1 second, sorry. Did we do the public comment?
While they get that going,
Oh, I did it.
why does Tom get
Oh,
3
you did?
mics and we only get 1?
4, although we now
It's
have.
the benefit of being the mayor.
I'm just
3
saying,
mics.
Run against him.
I don't want to.
But did you say you already did it?
Yes.
Okay.
Just,
Oh, okay. Well,
I
that's
believe
fast.
so. Thought I did.
I forgot about it.
Second.
If you go
I
on
think-
vacation, I'm gonna
Anyone
get,
who
when
wants
I'm
to
mayor.
You're gonna take all the mics?
You guys gonna pull all of them
I'll
together.
bring extras in from home.
Go ahead, Tam.
Mayor, council members, Tammy Emdahl from Northern Public Finance. And I'm normally before you this time of year to go through your long-term finance plan. And I know the council has been through this a few times now as a council, but I'm going to touch on the points for the viewing public. So the city does develop and maintain a long-term financial management plan for all of the city's funds. And this is really a guide. It is not your budget, and you've been going through your 2024 budget. You don't make any decisions. It's to help inform decisions that happen throughout the year. And it's really, if you go to the next slide, I covered that. And actually, we go to slide 3. We'll jump ahead here. The study approach. So as in the past, myself, Northland, we've worked with city staff on the preparation of this. So your finance manager, as well as Jessica and Kevin, that we spend time going through this. The assumptions on development are prepared by city staff, and that is constantly evolving. And again, this is not your budget. This is much more macro, big picture. I will note as I go through this tonight, much different than the last few years for the city, where the focus has really been on the utility funds and the projects. You'll see, and if you've had a chance to look at the report, really the challenge that's coming into focus now is related to facilities. And when I say facilities, I am including park facilities in that as well. And that is what's gonna be driving a lot of the charts and graphs that you see. If you can go to page, or slide 4, thank you. Really with the conclusions and recommendation that focus on maintaining those strong fund balances and reserves, that is helpful both for the city from a contingency standpoint, and it's also helpful to the city from a bond rating standpoint when the city has projects and plans for issuance of bonds and the maintenance of those strong fund balances. Identifying those strategies for funding capital, that's one of, in my opinion, the main purposes of this report, along with other bunch of other purposes, but in looking very long-term on those improvements. And as I mentioned in the past, really that's been heavy on the utility side. What you will see in the report now is on the facility side, really between municipal facilities and parks. Planning for those tax levies and utility fees, the impact of growth, these are assumptions. The actual timing and amount as far as units coming online will be different than the report. The report is just a macro look at it and those ever-changing conditions. If you go to slide 5, the assumptions in the plan this year are approximately 100 acres platted per year on average between 2023 and 2031. 336 residential equivalent units to be added per year on average during that same period, and that includes 204 for new multifamily housing units, which may be a conservative assumption, and that assumes those come online in 2025 from a tax standpoint.
Question for, I think probably Kevin. Are we on track for something close to 336 this year?
We are on track for like 225 to 250. That's like a 10-year average. So if you look back at the ebbs and flows, we're on track for that if you average out our history since we started with sewer and water.
Okay.
And I would say, again, this is the average from what we've seen. And we anticipate that likely to, the inflection point to increase, but we just wanted to basically base it off of what we've experienced today on an average basis.
Okay, thank you.
So it will bounce around a little bit.
Okay.
Next slide. So this is showing, with the exception, or with the exception of the equipment vehicle and the sustaining capital, it varies quite a bit. And those light blue bars, those are facilities related. In 2024, that relates to park masters. And then in 2026, that relates to a placeholder estimate for a new municipal facility at $50 million. And that's what you're seeing in that chart. So again, my opening comments, what's different this year is really the focus on these facilities costs, where in the past it has really been the utilities driving that variation. And staff can speak to more of that estimate. There's been no planning. That is based upon staff's best estimate at this point, given other similar projects. Could be less, could be more, but it is a placeholder that is now included in the plan for year 2026. If you go to the next slide. The challenge being the timing of the construction and the financing of those. There will not be enough money to pay cash for that. I don't need to tell that to the council. So that assumes bonding in those 2024 for park related. Some of that may be mitigated by park dedication fees and other grants that the city may be able to secure. And then for the facilities, all of that $50 million is assumed to be funded with the issuance of capital improvement plan bonds. Can you go to the next slide, slide 8? Over time, again, just given the assumptions of when these things might occur in the plan, you can see considerable growth, and this is showing you city debt payable and source of revenue, so debt service. Over time, about half of that would be funded from levy and the other half from utilities. The piece that's growing there is not the utility portion, the debt funded from net revenues of water and sewer. It's the debt that would be funded from tax levy directly related to those facilities being programmed in the CIP and the servicing of that debt and tax levy. If you go to the next slide. So this just pulls out
tax levy for debt service. In 2023, you're under $1 million. This is not your total levy, this is just levy related to debt service. And you can see with the assumption, if there were debt to be issued for parks in 2024 and for a new municipal facility in 2026, you can see by year 2028, it would be at about $5 million a year in total debt service for tax levy for debt service. Excuse me, the hour's getting to me. If you go to the next slide. So the plan, and I'm going to show you those numbers if you haven't seen it, but just graphically, we look at what would the tax rate, and that's that orange bar, and I'm going to step away from the podium. This bar, which follows tax rate, if there were no adjustments made, if the city did exactly what's in the plan and levy, you can see in year 2026, that's when you start to see the major impact of tax levy related to facilities. So the tax rate, and this assumes growth based upon those assumptions that we were just talking about a moment ago. But the tax rate would be up by that 10% and then the following year of 20%. That obviously is not acceptable to the city. I know you were trying to manage to a constant tax rate. What you should take away from the report this year, if those assumptions on development were to hold true as we have them in the plan, and if you went forward with bonding and those facilities based upon this timeline, it would be very challenging, if not impossible, to maintain a constant tax rate. So if you go to the next slide, please. On slide 11, this is actually a table that is in the report. And what we're showing here in the highlighted, that adjustment needed to the plan to achieve constant tax rate. So in year 2025, that number is actually positive. You might say, I don't understand, Tammy, what does that mean? That's really the multifamily senior living facility coming online. So that's additional tax base. So that's why above and beyond what's being projected in the plan for 2025, this is saying you could add another $500,000 to that budget and maintain constant tax rate. I'm going to pause if it's okay to take the question and then I'll resume.
Sure. I had a question. I passed this to staff in advance. That difference in property tax levy from 2024 to 2025, where it's going from 8.3 million to 11.9 million, I don't understand how it can jump that much. Could you maybe explain the assumptions and the values and how we get to that estimate?
Yes. So in that number, there are a few drivers. So if you go to the general fund line item, that is assuming staff changes that are outlined in the report. That's the main driver there in the general fund that you're seeing. You are seeing an increase in debt service levy for equipment. This assumes that there would be equipment certificates issued in 2024. You are assuming, or the plan, not you, the plan is assuming an increase in debt service for facilities, which includes the park and issuance of debt in 2024. So that levy would be going from what is now proposed for 2024 to be $712,000 to $1,244,000. That's what's driving that increase from 8.3 million approximately to 11.4
Well,
million.
that's on the cost side, but I'm referring more to the net tax capacity going from 19 million to 27 million.
That is being driven by the projected growth in single-family units, as well as the 204 approximately, the facility coming on, the multifamily coming online in that tax base. Because that project, unlike a lot of other projects in the metro area, is not captured in a TIF district. The city will benefit from that increase in that tax capacity when that comes online. That's what's driving it in 2025
Okay.
specifically.
We just stay firm on the non-tip district.
So, a follow-up question. I was looking just for commercial property of similar value. And maybe the TIF is the reason why I didn't see any, but I looked at a $55 million apartment in Maple Grove as an example, and their total tax on that property on the Hennepin County site was like $800,000. What do we expect the $45 million property in Corcoran to actually generate for the city?
I have that. I don't have that. If I was not so late, I could maybe pull that out of my
Okay.
head. We can get that to you.
Okay.
We have that. I can't answer that.
So we've vetted it, we're confident that it's right. is what I'm hearing.
Yes, it hasn't been built, so that taxable market value isn't there, but the magnitude of the estimate of the increase in the city's tax capacity, we find to be reasonable.
Okay.
It will be, once it's completed and the assessor has fully valued it, then we'll know for sure, but there is an estimate.
Okay.
And it's not just that project, it's also the single-family assumption of growth that's outlined in the report that's driving that increase from that 19 million to 27 million.
So 2025, those would be homes that are being constructed in 2023?
Yes.
So we should have good line of sight to that being accurate?
Yeah, again, I never know, but I feel like we are conservative in that approach. We're not trying to extend that number up. We're trying to tell you when there's big inflection points. So I think everything we've seen is we're overperforming that on an average 10-year basis.
Okay.
For consideration by the council, as you go into 2025, I would step away again. So here this is saying there's capacity to add another $500,000. You said, well, no, we're not going to do that. We have a reduction in our tax rate in 25, Tammy. This is what that's showing. And I'd say, yeah, that's true. The challenge with that, though, if you actually drop it down, is you get here in the out years, and what's driving this is the municipal facility and the estimated 50 million. So if you drop that down, then you're even further down from building back to have the revenue that would be needed to support that. If that project were to go forward on that timeline, to be determined.
And on that scale.
Okay?
We don't factor in any other multifamily developments, right? Because we have none that are permitted right now.
Yeah, we're not
So like a home site
speculative.
wouldn't
I
be
mean, that's
included.
right. If we're not speculative
Yeah,
on that, if we were to get a bunch, it would just,
but we do have some that are pretty far along in a planning stage. They just haven't reached to the point where they've come for preliminary approvals, right?
Yes, we've only put in here plans that we
that we've
know
actually
have been entitled
Yeah.
to.
we don't, yeah,
Create.
just simplest way to say it is we don't speculate on what's coming. We've looked backward looking and tried to be realistic.
Have we heard any more updates on that proposal that's out there?
The one,
Hope.
Hope, the Charter Commission meeting on Tuesday, I was told that they were hoping to have it in for the October deadline, so,
That's about what I would do.
fourth quarter.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
That
That's
is
a
not
good point.
factored in.
Nope,
right
that's
away.
good.
Yeah.
No speculation. Good.
Will help.
Do you want to go to the next slide?
It's why we need to get more commercial, because they're high value in a small area, and they're taxed at twice the rate of residential.
Yep.
Not to go down a rabbit hole now. For the city, with commercial, approximately 40% of that value is captured though in fiscal disparity. So that is the difference from solely looking at city taxes, that residential generates more city taxes than the commercial.
Does?
It does, for that reason, because of fiscal disparities and the capturing of that
Are
value.
you kidding me?
So we have to share that with other cities? The fiscal disparities,
We've
right?
been
It goes into a
trying for a
pool.
long time to increase our commercial base because we are working, are we totally working with?
It's still
assumptions
high
on that?
value per acre, right? I mean, you're,
Yeah.
It's less services.
So services, is there a tipping point between residential and commercial with the disparities?
It depends on the commercial, the light industrial, the warehouse, that tends to be on a city tax standpoint, just because of the density piece, and it requires a lot of land, doesn't generate as much city taxes. But it doesn't mean there's a lot of value, benefit to commercial property. I'm just making the point, keep in mind that fiscal disparities is a consideration, and a portion of that increase in value will be captured and shared metro-wide. Slide 12 is just demonstrating that point again, that over time, given the assumptions of the report, that while the general fund levy is projected to grow and reflects those staff as the city continues to grow, that debt service levy will become a larger portion of the total tax levy.
So in 3 years, we anticipate to double our levy you're under this assumption.
An emphasis on the assumption.
Yeah.
Because it's assuming that $50 million in year 2026, that is a placeholder amount. There has been no study or specific.
Right.
It's to put it on the radar. And again, as I said in my opening comments, this is long-term plan, macro. This is not your budget. This is not your capital improvement plan, your CIP. It's meant to help inform your decisions.
Totally understood.
The only assumption then is that 50 million for a
And
facility.
the parks.
That's the.
Everything else is conservative, everything else, and,
I
yeah.
think the big inputs are new RSS contribution to the city park for bonding, and then the facility.
Yep.
And you could conceivably do something different with the facility, right? You could do 30 million. with
Yeah, there's
20 million to follow 5 to 10 years.
We don't know that the building would
Just
cost,
doing this
yeah,
one.
that's just a number for putting a number.
Add a
in
second
there.
story.
For long-term plan.
Yeah, exactly.
Or we just stay in this one, just add a couple of shipping crates out back, put up
There
some
you go.
cubes. We're good.
On slide 13, the next slide, now I'm going to switch
What a
my
headache.
comments to the utility fund, so water and sewer. And if you have a chance to look at the plan, really that focus on when we're proposing rates, are you maintaining adequate cash to meet those objectives and ending that position, which is equivalent of fund balance? And the answer is the plan, yes, is providing for that, including the increase in revenue from those new housing units. The approximate range of increase over the term of the plan is in that 3% range. That the city has never gone on autopilot with your long-term planning. It's important to continue to note that. Disposal fees from that council have been going up closer to 7%, but overall the condition of the city's fund is looking like it will continue at that 3%. The next chart is just showing that growth in on slide 14. Ending cash balances are projected to be at sufficient levels, the top line being the total governmental funds, and that's growing because this assumes that issuance of debt for those facilities, and you're having that in your ending fund balance to meet those debt service. The orange dash is the enterprise fund, healthy balances, and the general fund roughly on an ending fund balance constant and meeting that ending fund balance reserve level.
One more question I have on this. I know it's come up in Parks and Trails several times about having a large fund balance that was getting what appeared to be very low interest. How much of our fund balance are we able to get a significant interest rate on? Or what is the limitation on that approach?
So I know that Maggie had just finished, or was just finishing up interest allocations, and so I'll have a better understanding of what amount we've seen, because there's a portion that should go to the park dedication fund. But we've had over the last couple of years, a more aggressive approach to investment, but have some investment that we hadn't had before 2018 or 2019. So we're still relatively conservative, but have done a lot more to manage our money. Even with our bond proceeds, we've put some of those into managing and getting interest off those proceeds as well.
Okay. I'd be interested in, when Maggie is back, getting an understanding of what we are doing and what risk is entailed in that and what more we could be doing with minimal risk, just because when I see a potential for $10 million in cash, if you can get the prevailing 5% on bonds for that at essentially no risk, I would hope, with short-term bonds, that's a lot of supplemental funding that you could avoid taking debt out for equipment or other things in the future.
Can Jeremy and I be on a committee to do that?
Sure, I'm fine with it.
I don't know if you need a committee. If you need one, I'm happy to participate.
Sure.
Well,
I'll
I've
put
looked
it
at
on
stuff
the-
before, just because I'm in the industry, all around this stuff. And they seem to be doing like good things, but in the right things in the way. They don't do everything the way I would do it, but
let's say if we need one, you tour it.
I'll put on the council schedule in February
Oh,
or
you-
March for,
You could have your own meeting
update
with
from-
Maggie and I'll have my own meeting with Maggie.
She will be back in January.
January.
Oh, shoot. Who's running the finances in the meantime?
Kevin.
It's a team effort. Kathy's helping, Abdul assisting, and then Wayne and Jody are also helping.
Ooh, oh.
It's gonna be a lot of team
Our
efforts.
accountant does utility clerk.
I mean, it's literally what I do for a living, is manage cash flows, efficiencies of investments, work with entities like our city. So I should probably look at what we're doing. Jeremy should too, because now we're dealing with interest rates.
Great.
Thanks for
We'll put it on
volunteering.
our calendar for an update.
Sounds good.
Yeah, you should update the council.
Maybe a work session
Work
would be a way to do it.
We can figure out the process later. I want to be a little cognizant of time, knowing we have our attorney.
Our attorney is.
Oh, yeah.
I'm on the
I was
last
sending
slide.
emails.
Perfect.
Really just-
No, it wasn't you. It was us
No,
getting
you're-
sidetracked.
You're not the delay, Jeremy's the delay tonight.
I won't read you what it says, but the continued importance of maintaining this plan. And I will repeat what I've said a few times. This is not your budget, but it helps to inform and put on the radar major things. And it's based upon certain assumptions. I find those assumptions to be reasonable in working with your staff, but will they be exactly correct? No, they will not. It may be more favorable than what we have here, or there may be some challenges to deal with as you continue to look at the long term. Thank you. If there are questions, you can pass them along through staff and we can follow up.
Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Tammy.
Tammy.
Appreciate it.
As always, great job.
Thank you.
And with that, I will entertain a motion to adopt the 5-year financial management plan as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Drive safe. And 10B, real quick, draft 2024 enterprise fund budgets.
Thank you. Mindy actually put together some draft budgets with Kevin and I, looking at, we've been really working on overplanning the water and sewer fund, and put together some draft budgets for us to look at. So just really, if you have feedback for us before we adopt these, we'll be looking at adopting these at the December 18th meeting.
Sounds good. Any questions, concerns? If not, I will entertain a motion to direct staff to complete the 2024 draft budgets as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
5 ayes. Perfect. Then we are on to staff reports, planning project updates, typical, a lot going on. Progress report, would we plan on having any discussion on that or just in the packet? People can find it.
Yep, just wanted to, I did want to clarify that we had the budget increase, the general fund budget increase was 10.7, which would have been less than we had talked about the inflation population growth.
No, that was, okay.
I just wanted
From
to
an earlier
clarify, I had some
conversation.
information in the measurables that was in there, but if you have any other questions on things we're making progress.
Very good.
There's several things checked off and feeling pretty good.
The Mystique Road one is also in there. It's an interesting situation that hopefully we'll get through that with the state. It's an office I didn't know existed, Office of the State Archaeologist or whatever it is. So, interesting situation.
Where exactly is that? Because I drove by there trying to look for it. Is that, I mean, is it a super small monument?
Not really.
It looks like a utility, with those gray columns.
Yep.
Yeah?
It looks like that.
Is it on the south or north side of the road?
North.
Okay.
Up underneath the tree, just like the one lot east of Robert Lane.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's up under a tree. It's in a right of way.
I'll go pay my respects then.
It's just more disclosure. We're intending to try it one more time to get it removed, because I think that's what should happen. being respectful of the situation, we may not get it removed. If this doesn't work, then we'll modify the design and continue with the project. The project will be, shovel ready come road restrictions of next year's plan. We thought it was worth trying one more time to see if we could get it relocated so it didn't impact our right of way in the future with turn lanes, trails, whatever. We have to design around it if we can't get it moved, so.
You're doing the right thing. Thank you.
Okay,
So it's
then-
just that we're intending to disclose, or to continue this, if you don't like that, this was the time to tell us,
no, I
staff
think we have to.
moving forward.
I think we have to. Okay, on to item 12, which is 3 closed sessions, and I've got a bit of a read here. But under the authority of Minnesota Statute 13D.05 subdivision 3B, the city is permitted to close a meeting for attorney-client privilege to discuss pending litigation. The city council is going into closed session for that purpose to discuss the response to the action filed by Housing First Minnesota. Upon adjournment of that closed session, the city council will enter a second closed session to discuss non-public health and medical data, which must be discussed in a closed session per Minnesota Statute 13D.05 subdivision 2A, 3, and 4. Upon adjournment of that closed session, per the authority of Minnesota Statute 13D.05 subdivision 3C3, the city council will enter into a third closed session to consider an offer for real estate or personal property. The following properties are subject of that closed meeting. PID 23119-234100007, PID 24119-2333001, PID 24119-2333002. And we are off.
Recording stopped.